Have you ever found yourself daydreaming while you were driving? Had to settle a group of noisy kids who were fighting in the back seat? Been in such a rush that you needed to put your makeup on or shave on the way to work? Many of us take driving for granted and underestimate how demanding driving can be. But driving is a complex task that requires attention. It is our first responsibility, our primary task. But often a secondary task, like talking on a wireless phone or finding an address, complicates driving. Whether we are experienced or novice drivers, we all need to become more aware of when we are distracted. We need to get to know our personal capabilities and our limitations and learn new ways of coping with distractions that will help us put safety first. The two major causes of collisions are inattention and distractibility. Do you believe that you're capable of driving and juggling distractions without a problem? Do you think that you're better at managing distractions than other people? Do you figure that other, less competent drivers are the ones who cause crashes? Well then, you might be surprised to learn that in fact, most of us are average drivers. And most crashes are caused by average drivers just like us. Driving is one of the most dangerous activities we will ever engage in. Add any type of distraction that takes away from the principal task of driving, and there could be potentially severe consequences. All drivers deal with distractions, and distractions can be fatal. Common distractions fall into three categories: environmental, situational, and psychological. These conditions add layers of complexity to your driving, and each adds to the likelihood of your being involved in a crash. Trees and bushes that obstruct an intersection, slippery roads, snow, rain, fog, or any condition that prevents us from seeing or hearing clearly are all examples of environmental distractions that add to the difficulty of our primary task, driving.
You want the ball? No. Because the girls were looking at me. It was pressure.
Yeah, the girl.
Pressure.
Yeah, there was tons of girls.
Max thinks driving is easy, but driving is one of the most demanding tasks he will ever do. He believes that he's a great driver who can handle whatever the elements have to throw at him. For Max, driving is second nature. What he's forgotten is that driving is his primary task. He doesn't realize that all the excitement is compromising his driving. He may have driven many times in the past without incident, but the consequences of making a poor decision due to being distracted may be disastrous.
They were looking at my perfect pass right into your hand.
Oh, it's the pressure. I had pressure. I'm telling you, it was
Your arms are short is the problem.
Whoa, watch out!
It's important for drivers to think about the risk of a crash, but often it's the risk of some other issue that's more prevalent. How many times have you been concerned about missing a bit of conversation or being late for an appointment? It may seem more important at the time, but ignoring the risk of a crash has much greater consequences. If Max had the opportunity to do it all again, what would he do differently? First of all, he would acknowledge that the conversation is distracting him and that it is making driving more difficult. Secondly, he would leave more space between his car and the vehicle in front of him so that he can see what's coming up. Max missed the simple but important cues that tell him about the potential problems caused by obstructed vision. Max needs to realize that crashes do happen, and they happen very fast. Often crash survivors say that they never saw it coming. That's because their attention was focused on something other than their primary task, driving.
Dave, how you doing, buddy? It's Joe. Yes, sir.
Distractions that are situational are defined as any activity that occurs while driving. Some of these activities are controlled by the driver, such as using a wireless phone, while some are not, such as noisy passengers or daring pedestrians. As a driver, you may not always be able to control the situation, but you can control your response. Joe believes that talking on a wireless phone is no more demanding than having a conversation with a passenger.
Dave, we're supposed to do this together.
It's so easy to miss even the most obvious piece of information when our minds are otherwise occupied.
We've been working together on this for 6 months. Oh, come on, buddy! I want you to go back.
What Joe doesn't realize is that the degree of his distraction depends on the amount of thinking involved in his conversation and the emotional content of his call.
Dave! How you doing, buddy? It's Joe. Yes, sir.
Think about how differently you feel when you're having a brief exchange about the weather and when you're surprised by a piece of devastating news. While driving, wireless phones are valuable for personal and safety reasons, but they are best used for messages, not for conversations.
Yeah, I'm on my way there. What do you mean?
If you absolutely must use your wireless phone, you have many options.
We're supposed to make this together.
Avoid having a lengthy dialogue. Have your phone pre-programmed for commonly used numbers rather than dialing manually. Never take notes while driving. Place calls when the vehicle is stopped, like when you're at a red light. A hands-free device will allow you to have both hands on the wheel and give you better overall visibility, though it is not a substitute for the attention you must give your primary task of driving.
Okay, hold on a second. I gotta pull over.
If it's safe to do so, pull over to take the call, or allow your voicemail to take a message.
You went ahead and presented this without me? Aw, forget it, David. Forget it!
Most of all, know yourself and recognize your personal limitations. How does your driving change when you get upset or angry? How much can you handle before you become overloaded? Psychological distractions occur when the task of driving creates some form of angst, anxiety, or mental stress. Being rushed because you slept in and feeling like you don't have enough time may contribute to your inability to think straight. Also, a battle with a preschooler adds to the psychological strain.
No, Julian, listen to me. Julian!
What?
Oh, you are so grounded. Julian, come on. Mommy's getting really, really late. Don't move.
Jane is so worried about being late that she isn't paying attention to the driving task. Compounding her problem is the fact that her child is also demanding her full attention. Jane must find a way to reduce her anxiety.
Charlene, I'm going to be late.
Calling work to let them know she's running late can ease her stress and help her focus on her primary task, driving. Have you ever been tempted to cut safety corners, like not using seatbelts because you were concerned about being late? Have you ever figured that the risk of a crash is less likely because you weren't driving very far? It doesn't matter how short or long your trip is, always buckle up. Don't get involved in spats on the road. Pull over if you have to settle an argument. And if possible, prepare ahead of time. Don't let a crash be your wake-up call. One of the keys to being a good driver is having the ability to attend to the driving task. It sounds simple, but it's not. As a driver, you're constantly required to prioritize information while simultaneously having to manage environmental, situational, or psychological distractions. Remember, the response to distractions is under your control. The driver is always in charge. Many of us underestimate just how complicated the task of driving can be. We take driving for granted and often think we're more capable than we really are of juggling multiple tasks. Becoming a more aware and less distracted driver is a process. It takes a willingness to recognize our personal limitations and an understanding that these limitations change as circumstances change. We all need to identify our own limitations and to discover our own ways of applying new strategies that help us minimize the risks of collisions. Attentive driving benefits us all. Our safe arrival depends on it.